Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of Strife's Sanctum. I'm your host, Citizen Strife, and we were going to do Tales of Berseria with a guest this week. However, unforeseen circumstances had me change things up. I won't go into the specifics, at least right away, because it actually, part of it will come up in a lot of our discussion about the game I'm going to do instead, or at least how I processed dealing with that situation, because Catherine isn't just a game to me. And this is not going to follow the same structure that I have had for the other games and for the Psychopaths review. I tend to have these mapped out as here's some pros, here's some cons, here's the battle system, here's the thing. Catherine is such a different situation. On an emotional level, I have to change it around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the in-game experience first, the battle system, if you will, if you could call it that, but then delve into the characters, and then honestly what they tell me, and what the character endings say to me, and how they've changed from the original version that was released in 2010 to the recent version, which I believe was 2018 or 2019 under the name Full Body. And these were released for PS3 and PS4 by Atlus Entertainment, or Atlus, excuse me. They are the people who made Persona and Shin Megami Tensei. So they made Shin Megami Tensei first, back in the 80s. So they started making Persona in the 90s, but they didn't really hit their stride until Persona 3, and I will go over those on another day because God willing, those will be way bigger experiences. I've had podcasts for about an hour, give or take. Persona is going to take way longer than that, I'm sure, to talk about, at least Persona 3 through 5. But I remember Persona 3 got me so interested that when I had I didn't have a battery charge on my controller, so I walked half an hour to a Blockbuster, yes, those still existed at the time, just to walk back home, because there was no buses, with a charged controller, just so I could play Persona 3 again. And then Persona 4 comes out, and I'm wholly invested in it. So already by then, I'm all in on the Persona and SMT bandwagon. So a game like Catherine comes out, and it marks a unique spin-off. They frame it as sort of a TV show under the guise of a golden playhouse. Now, they've never done it since, and I'm a bit disappointed that they haven't used this framing device since. So in this TV show, this narrator character known as Midnight Venus gives you this, like, here's a romance TV show, which is the actual video game itself and the actual characters that we talk about. And then we dive into the game, and then the game proper would start. So it's an interesting framing device. And then Catherine proper as a game was described as a visual novel or a romance narrative with Killer Qbert, basically. Now, I'd not played Qbert in God knows how long, and I don't know how true that is, but it's a block puzzle game where you're climbing up and things are trying to kill you, and the idea is if you die in a dream, you die in real life. You know, that whole joke. But it's not a joke. And for everybody who's interested in the gameplay and the puzzle aspect of climbing towers in a time limit, you have someone like me who is influenced solely by the character narrative, because you have these two interplaying things. You play the in-game block puzzle to understand how to get to the next, story point. Because the story point for me is what really intrigued me and where I'm going to spend a lot of the time on. But Catherine came out, and I don't know, and I don't think they're as big as Persona, and I don't think they were ever meant to be. But the people who have played it know it, and it is a dark experience. It is an awkward experience. It is somewhat comedic on spots, but it really digs deep into your subconscious on an occasion. And even, I don't know if it perfectly encapsulates what they were going for, it still makes you think a lot about what you actually think about relationships, dating, friendships, falling in love, marriage, how you deal with other people because of these questions that they give you in between stages. And I'll go over all of that later. So it's this interplay of this crazy puzzle thing that makes no goddamn sense because it's in a nightmare mode, and this romance subplot, which, to be fair, makes little sense too because of the characters who intersperse, and you think why. And I say the word interplay, intersperse all the time because everything kind of feeds in on itself. Atlus is good with making everything feel like it matters, or these little references matter, or these little inferences and character moments matter. And I don't think Catherine is the best example of that, but it's still an amazing idea. So when I'm going to go into it, I'm going to go into the characters and their subplots and what they did for me as a person, more so than the Catherine as a game. So this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy review, and this is going to be something that I've never done before, and I'm honestly a bit scared, because I'm going to talk about things that, whether they happened 20 years ago in my life, or they happened just recently, are influenced by things like this game telling me things about myself that I didn't know, or thinking things that I thought I knew, but still need to work on as a person. The game itself has received some issues as far as editing in the, I'd say, the English version and the Japanese version, because in Japan, I think a lot of gender stereotypes, or like women and men and transgender things like that are a few years behind us. I know in America we tend to be hyper vigilant and honestly a bit hypersensitive about how we interact with people, especially on social media, about the littlest of things, much less somebody who wants to change their gender, wants to change their identity, wants to think of themselves as a different person. And again, I will go into spoilers here for one of the characters. In an ending of this game, you find out that one of the characters you knew was giving subtle hints that they aren't exactly who they say they are, and the party kind of niggles and prods and makes jokes of it. At the time, it looked really bad and still kind of does, but in the English version of the re-release, they actually cut out some of the language that would turn Erica, who is a woman, and I will just say it right now before I get into it later. Erica, one of the characters in the game that Vincent meets, is a trans woman, post-operative. So the idea is that she had an operation from male to female. One of the characters found out about it before, or during sex, I think. The party already knew because they were older and they were friends, and knew that she had the operation. And I think they took it as a mean-spirited way of doing things. And one of the aspects that the English version had to do was cut out some of that dialogue. They had to take away some of that because we still are in a situation where I'd say transgender is not the easiest subject to handle. I think it's more accepted, but I'd still say, things like gay marriage and other things like that are not, even in America, handled with the best subtlety. So imagine a society like Japan, where this game comes from, where, they still have more traditional values, I think. At least a few years or maybe 10 years behind a social curve. Again, I'm generalizing, and I'm not saying that is the truth, because I've never been there. But it just seems that in media that comes from that culture, they are a little bit behind. So what they think about this may or may not be the most sensitive of approaches. So it was subtly changed a little bit. And again, you may not even know. You can infer that Erica is transgender from the dialogue, but unless you go one specific ending and one specific route, You're not going to be told flat out, oh my God, she was a guy. You know, looking back on it, why do you care? You know, but I'll get into that way more later. But I did want to put that up front because that is one of the things that the game itself and the company itself had to deal with. It was a minor thing. I don't think it was as big a controversy as people led on to believe, but there was some stink about it because Atlus has had to change some stuff around for re-releases as well in Persona 5, though that was also another annoyance. But so that has happened. Getting into the game itself, I'm going to focus on the way the systems work first, again, before going into the characters. So there are two ways this game operates. You operate in the in-game, physically fighting, I guess, puzzle mode, and then the social interaction mode. It's a lot like how Persona does its you're in the metaverse or the TV world or Tartarus kind of thing as your gameplay. And then your social link stuff is talking with characters and learning about who they are and how they interact and how you improve on them, and they feed into each other. This is the same kind of idea, slightly altered for a much quicker experience and going for more horror comedy sort of vibe. So in the nightmare sections, you have a horror section. In the daytime segments, you have some horror still, but it's more played for comedy and more played for romance and like drama kind of thing. So you're not going to die when you're in the daytime events. You're going to die if you're in the nightmare, because again, if you die in the nightmare, you die in real life, that sort of thing. So the nightmare mode is all block puzzles. Like I said, Killer Cubert. You have a stage, and it is a puzzle stage, and the idea is to climb up. Different difficulties, easy, hard, beginner, whatever, have different time limits. Some of them don't even have time limits. You can also auto-complete a stage if you feel that it's too difficult, or you can auto-complete a part of a stage if you're stuck on a puzzle. You can also do what is affectionately known as undo. Undo. It's exactly how the narrator says it. Undo. Where if you have what's known as a pillow, you can undo a move. So you feel like you're messed up, the game will tell you, and you say, okay, go back to this spot so that you can retry this part of the puzzle, and then keep climbing. They got checkpoints. They've got little enemies floating around. Some of them you have to knock down. Some of them you have to kill. Some of you got to throw these little weapons things, these little items and weapons at them to climb up the tower, ring the bell, and get done before you fall. That being said, you can keep falling or fall victim to traps, because not just the puzzles that you pull out or push and to make platforms or to edge. I had to say it because if you're going to play Catherine, you have to hear edge. So anytime you hit an edge, you have to push a block to a point where it stays upright, and then you can keep climbing up, or you can keep pushing it and hit edge. So you're going to hear edge and undo all over and over. You can tell I've played this over and over, and I'll stop that. But you get through these little puzzles each stage, and then you get a break. So these stages are 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long, sometimes 4 to 5. They have traps. Harder stages have ice blocks where you slide off them. In one chapter, you can slide off them. They'll tell you how to get through all of these, by the way. But you got spike traps that instantly kill you. You got blocks that blow up. You got slower block puzzles. You've got tons of things. You got these blocks that instantly transport you to the nth dimension sort of thing, which is basically instant death, so you don't touch those. They're barriers, pretty much. So you get to know whether they're the normal blocks or the crazy blocks or the trap blocks all at once. In the original, they had, it was a block. In the remake, they did what was known as a remix mode, where they had these gigantic, like, T-shaped blocks or X-shaped blocks that were like 5 or 10 blocks thick, and you had to push the entire one as a single block, and it made for a definite change in how you would approach a certain puzzle. Every puzzle is different. I think they aren't randomized. I don't believe they are randomized. I mean, I don't know how you would, but even so, if you have an inkling to do harder puzzles, you can change it to a harder difficulty, or you can change it to remix mode, which gives you those larger blocks that you have to work around and have to survive. When you do survive, you get to these landings, these places where you can save, you can talk to other people, you can talk to what are known as sheep. And again, I'm going into those with characters later on, but you and the other sheep are stuck in this nightmare because of this thing known as the woman's wrath. And dying in the dream means that you've basically wasted away in the real world. And it's an epidemic or a pandemic or whatever. It's a rash of suicides. That's how they would describe it in the news. So you and countless other people, including people of your own friends group, are stuck, and you have to kind of talk to them and, learn different skills. And this is how you learn skills in game, is talk to a couple people and they say, how about this skill? So you start making like little S-shaped curves. You throw a block and you make a thing tumble down, or you make a big curve up the side, and then you have to do all these little things to climb up a big block. And then when you're done talking to the sheep and you've probably saved your game, you go into what's known as a confessional. And this is where the fun part of the game lies, because a lot of the character moments and endings and talking about relationships and how you yourself feel, a person from on high is just fucking with you and pestering Vincent, who's in his boxer shorts in the dream for some reason. So this thing known as Astaroth keeps asking you questions, and you have to answer one of two ways. And depending on how you answer, that will influence this gauge that's been running around in the daytime and during those confessional questions. And even when you interact with some of the sheep in the nightmare, it'll be a blue bar, it'll be, white in the middle, and then red all the way to the end. And it was introduced in the original. In the remake, they have a way around that if you want to do a third ending, which I will get to later. I'm going to save all the route explanations for later, but suffice it to say, these questions can range from anything to, if you had a secret that you couldn't tell your partner, would you be willing to talk? Or would you, I think one of the darker questions, what was it? It was, do you think life begins or ends at marriage? I'm like, that is one of the darkest freaking questions you could imagine, because you're telling somebody to get married, but their life just ends or it begins. So it's kind of a pessimistic view of life versus an optimistic view. But it also goes into, do you believe in commitment and stability, or do you just feel like you are shackled in this relationship? And everybody is different. Everybody thinks differently. And if you're going for a different ending, you might think, well, I'm not going to answer honestly. I'm going to try the other one, for instance. But when you think about it, and you think about what the question is kind of guiding you towards, is this a law-abiding question, or is this a chaotic question? Law as in stability, order, and, everything is like structured, and, it's not meant to be a bad thing, versus chaos, which is considered freedom and free will and, unpredictability, that sort of thing. That's where they get at with these ideas. And the characters themselves are split in these different paths. So you yourself can gauge where you want to go depending on which character you like more and who you personally would aspire to be. The Catherine characters tend to fall into those categories, and you yourself can be like, I like this character more, or I like what they represent more, or both. So I'm going to go that way. Or you can say, oh, I did that in the first playthrough, so I'm going to do this instead. Or I want to change it up and I want to know. Because you actually get told what other people, like online polls and stuff, said as well. So you get these weird instances where people will like totally agree with you, or you're like in the minority. Or you get to hear things about people you weren't expecting, like darker secrets. And the questions don't go too graphic, but they still make you think. But that's the nightmare section. Let me get a sip of water here. Sorry about that. And the daytime section, that is where I enjoyed it. I don't mind the block puzzles, because you have to have gameplay, I guess. Otherwise, this would be a visual novel. But to me, the game begins and ends with the characters. It begins and ends with the plot. And this is where, once you're done with a day, you go through a day in the daytime world, in the real world, in this like spaceport kind of place. Maybe next to the moon or something, like a colonized planet or a colonized like space near Mars. That's the framing device. In this little TV world at Midnight Venus is showing you the game. The world is set in this like mini spaceport. It's got a bar, it's got some jobs, it's got some workers, it's got some all these things, restaurants, whatever. It's a civilized like sitcom place. It's a city. Anything you can imagine in a city, like a bar or a bar setting, it's like those. So they don't focus on the city itself. They focus on where the characters go. So it's mostly bars, it's mostly restaurants as framing devices for where the characters meet up, or they meet up in their apartment building, that sort of thing. It's solely cut off from the nightmare mode, so you don't have to worry about dying or anything like that. It's all about meeting the characters and understanding them and figuring out what you like or dislike about them. The social interaction is key to this whole game, because all of it boils down to how do you deal with this Catherine person? How do you deal with this new Catherine? Or in the second game, how do you deal with a third Catherine? Because that's how they decided on this. They were just like, well, we'll have 3 people with the same name. That's going to be fun. The other gameplay, I suppose, could be boiled down into the bar mechanics. So again, you're talking with your friends in your booth at your bar. You can take drinks of different types of drinks. Erica, the barmaid, will give you a drink, and then I think if you get drunk, you go faster in the nightmare mode. I didn't really dabble in it. You get these like weird like asides, like, it looks like you finished your glass. Here's some trivia. In that little like nice, here's some trivia about drink, but not in the you're drunk kind of way. It's the more like how a thing became named a thing sort of way. I don't personally drink, so I don't know anything about all that. I don't really care. My interest was when you're in the bar, the people that you met in as sheep in the nightmare mode correspond to people that you meet in the bar. Some of the members are not part of it. Eric is not part of it. Boss is not part of it. And on occasion, most of your like 4 or 5 friends aren't. But anyone else, whether it be a journalist, a police officer, a chef, I think in the remake they had an oil tycoon, a person with a girlfriend, that sort of thing. A couple of stoner or just like suave dudes sitting at the bar, that sort of thing. So those 5 or 10 people have problems, or they want to talk to you about their problems, and Vincent kind of goes up to them and says, hey, keep at it, because this nightmare thing, like they're not supposed to know that they know each other, but they kind of infer it after a while. Maybe like 3 or 4 days in, there's like, I know who you are. You shouldn't like accept your fate, because everybody is just like, this sucks. I was tempted, or I was thrown in this situation, and I cheated on my girlfriend or my wife, and now I'm caught in this nightmare world. That's the idea. Is any like single man who isn't married is thrust into this nightmare world. The game will tell you later on, but for all these guys know, they were punished because they cheated on their significant others with whatever, and now they're stuck in this thing. So Vincent's whole idea is he has to save them. I mean, you don't have to, and you'll actually notice if you don't that they become obituaries on the news, and you find less and less and less sheep the more you go on. I don't know if that applies to the 2 or 3 main dudes that are in your drinking group, like your main friends. I think those guys may or may not be like locked into the plot regardless, so they don't have that problem. But anybody who's a side NPC, you either can talk to them and save them and cheer them up and they will survive to the end, or they just up and die. And the game doesn't pull any punches. I think you have to talk to every single person in every single way, and there's like a time limit to get around that. So it's like, So those are the bar mechanics. Let's see here. The music, honestly, not as much as you would expect with the music. Especially in a Persona game or an SMT game. Shoji Meguro, who did Persona 3, Persona 4, and then went on to do Persona 5 after this, he wasn't doing his normal like hard rock or acid jazz or pop jazz kind of thing. He was kind of taking a lot of music and turning it, like taking classical music. So every stage that you go into would have a piece of classical music remixed to be like this nightmare or hard rock or acid rock version of that music piece. So I don't know a lot of classical music, but when you read the soundtrack list, you're just bombarded with classical music. And offhand, when you're in that nightmare space, like I forgot one of the parts of the nightmare space right now, so I'll mention it now. When you get to the ends of a stage, before you get to the daytime sections, you have to face a boss. You don't fight a boss, you escape a boss. But these bosses are manifestations of what Vincent feels for that given day. So if Catherine with a K is telling him, hey, we're going to have a kid or something, then he would dream about this gigantic child chasing him and like going, Daddy! And it's just creepy ass thinking. And there's another one where it's just like Catherine with a C tempts him, so now he's chased after this like just this immoral beast with this, it looks like a butt or a vagina or something, and God, I'm gonna get in trouble with this video, I swear. But they have attacks and they have a shorter time limit, as one would expect, while you're trying to climb the damn thing. So you're running away from these gigantic bosses that are trying to kill you, and you're trying to focus on the music, but your main concern is, I just gotta get the fuck out of here. So it's not that I don't like the music. It's that when you're in the thick of it, you don't really have time to think of it. So if you do enjoy the music, I would say go listen to some soundtracks on YouTube, or, buy the soundtrack yourself and do it in the comfort of your own home without a time limit or a boss trying to kill you. The difference becomes a couple of songs that you get in the bar setup or the restaurant. So you get a song for when you're talking with Catherine and what's known as the Chrono Rabbit. Very subdued but dramatic, slower piece. And then a Stray Sheep, which is a jazz theme. I love it. When you're at the bar, it's a jazz theme. It's just slow. It's just, very pleasant to listen to. It's like bar music. You can even mess with music in the jukebox. That's another way you could listen to the music. If you've missed it on the boss segments or the in-game segments, you can check out the jukebox and you can play them from a jukebox in the Stray Sheep bar. And you actually get access to like Persona 3, Persona 4, I think, and Persona 5 music in the remake. So if you're not as familiar with Persona, you can listen to those songs and be like, oh god, Persona 5 music is so freaking good. I like Persona 3 and Persona 4 music, but goddamn, Persona 5 is just so good in that regard. But anyway, that's the music. That's the bar setup. That's that, I would suppose. But let me spend the rest of the time digging into the plot and the characters. And I don't know how long this is going to take, but I guarantee you I have a lot to talk about. And this is the main meat of the game for me, because it tells me and infers to me what I feel inside and how I interact with people. So as I mentioned before, the plot is you're in this TV space, this golden playhouse. You're playing what's essentially a living TV show. These single men are stuck in this nightmare world because they cheated on their significant others, whether it be wives. I don't think it's wife. I think it's girlfriends or fiancés. They haven't physically married yet. They make it a big deal that they haven't officially tied the knot or reproduced. So if you haven't physically married or had sex with someone, you are at risk for this woman's wrath thing if you cheat on someone else. So if you cheat on somebody, you go to the nightmare world and you have to deal with that. And most, if not all of them, die. The one who doesn't, or the one who you are controlling so he doesn't have that happen, is Vincent. And Vincent is like 30, 35, somewhere around there. So my age. So it makes me hate him even more. Vincent is voiced by Troy Baker very well, by the way, and a lot of the voice acting in this game is great, but the character himself is the perfect foil for something so silly as a romance subplot. Vincent is in a relationship with Catherine with a K. I think it's Catherine McBride. She's voiced by Michelle Ruff. And she is not like a domineering woman, but she's that career woman who knows how to, take care of herself. And her idea is she and Vincent met up at a class reunion, I think. I think they knew each other back in college or high school, but they didn't really know each other. But 5 or 10 years later, they meet up and she asks him to go out and they get together and things go on for a few years, and Catherine starts to get this like annoyed feeling that Vincent is just happy, just letting life go by. Nothing's bothering him. Nothing has to change. And yet her parents are like, when are you going to get married to this dork? So she has this internal pressure, but inside she's also like, why are you not like marrying me? We've been together for like 5 years and it feels like I'm the one taking care of you, because she's the one making, like, she's a fashion designer. She's making a lot of money. I mean, he's working too, but he's working, some construction job or like Amazon, packaging job or whatever, just something like a clerk, basically. So she makes a lot of money and she's self-sufficient and she thinks through everything. And she's talking to Vincent, and Vincent is just non-committal, doesn't know what to do, wants things to just stay the way they are, and he has this internal monologue with himself that he's like, why is she pressuring me? Well, her clock is ticking because it's mental pressure, and she's starting to get a little annoyed with it. So Vincent goes to the Stray Sheep and he talks with his friends, and the day goes by and they tell him he's being mopey, and some of them have friendships, some of them have family, some of them were married but weren't married. So some of them, like one of them's a dork who doesn't have, like, he's a virgin, so he doesn't have the concept of being in love, but he wants to with Erica, which is a weird thing because, as I said, she's post-op, but he doesn't know that. So the original game makes it this weird, like, no, you don't want to be with her. I'm like, that's kind of weird because Erica looks really good. What does being post-off transgender have to do with, probably being the nicest character in the room, you know. But again, that's something that the original game didn't, played for laughs because, aha, you used to be a guy, you used to be part of our group, Toby doesn't know that, and, as the game goes on, it's a subplot. But you get this interaction between them. They get going. Vincent keeps drinking, and he talks to the barkeep known as Boss, and keeps serving him drinks. And then he wakes up and he finds this other Catherine, and he gets that dumbass look on his face, and he's like, "Oh fuck, I fucked up really badly." So he spends like all day trying to not say anything to the other Catherine, to Catherine with a C, or Catherine with a K, because he just knew he fucked up. Whether it was his choice or not, he found out he had sex. Whoa boy. So he cheated on them. And the game proceeds in this weird web of deceit and lies and things. And Vincent is trying to dodge like every question that Catherine's giving him. And Catherine even goes so far as to claim that she's pregnant, which leads to the daddy boss fight with the baby, and then later with a baby with a chainsaw. It's fucked up. But yeah. So it goes on for 3 to 5 days. As things go on, Catherine with a C keeps coming into his room, and they keep, they do the sitcom drama thing where Catherine with a K is trying to meet up with Vincent, but Catherine with a C is around him, and he doesn't know what to do, and he keeps saying no, that situational comedy where he's trying to push someone out the door so that you don't see that person. So everything goes along for a few more days. You get this subplot with some guy named Steve, and it goes places, but it's really just there to pad time, I guess. And 6 or 7 days go by, and then Catherine finally realizes something's going on, or finally realizes that Catherine is there. And she realizes that because Catherine with a C reveals herself in this crazy scene. She's just mugging all over Vincent and calling Catherine a fucking granny or an ice queen. And Catherine is just staring daggers into Vincent the whole time, telling him, just tell her that we're meant to be together and all this stuff. And it's just like, Vincent just keeps like trying to apologize. He's so fucking non-committal, and Catherine's reaction is just like, "Fuck you! I am sick of your shit." And then she keeps getting prodded by Catherine with a C, so she's looking for a knife, and Catherine with a C is just like, "I'm gonna stab you, bitch." And she stabs Vincent, and she tries to stab Catherine with a K, and Catherine with a K ends up stabbing her instead. And then another nightmare happens. And then you're in this fucking escort mission, and it's just like, fuck. So as hard as the game was before, one of the end boss fights of the game is running up a tower with Catherine with a K, who's never done this before, running away with Catherine with a C with a demonic look on her face. And it's just like, God damn it. And then you find out it was all a dream. And then Catherine doesn't know shit because this was all in Vincent's head. But Catherine knew that something was going on, and she broke up with him. She had enough of his shit, and to be fair, I would think Catherine would be well within her right, because Vincent never said, I think he tried once or twice, but it kept either, just dodging the question, or too late, he said, "I have a girlfriend, I'm done with this shit." But he kept being non-committal, and he didn't learn his lesson. The lesson is he's trying to realize that he really likes Catherine, and then she just up and goes, "Fuck you. I've had enough of your shit." And yeah, she's totally not on level either, because she faked being pregnant, but she's trying every single thing you can to just get this guy in a mindset where he has to take care of himself for her and compromise her, his like stoner bro vibe, I guess. I don't know the best way to describe it, but his non-committal ways, and try to be right, because what if they do have kids someday? He can't just be this like slacker for the rest of his life, and she's had enough of it. And you can do that. You can do that, and that's one of those. And this is where the game splits. So the game kind of goes on its merry way, and you have different routes that you can end the game on at that point. This was the original, and this is also a point in a little before then is where the new route comes in, but I'll save the new route with the new character for last. But as far as the original game goes, the main problem I have is, regardless of whether you go with Catherine with a K, you go with Catherine with a C, or you go what's known as the Freedom route, the game proceeds the same way after this point. You find out that the boss was fucking with you this entire time, and you got to climb this last big fucking, place called the Imperio and face off with him and run for your damn life. And then, things go their merry way. Depending on how you answered some questions, and depending on how you had that little blue gauge, red gauge kind of thing, depending on where it fits, you end up in one of three scenarios. So one of the routes is Catherine with a K is told that all of this was in Vincent's head and didn't actually happen, because Catherine was it's really goofy, because like Catherine with a K is a succubus, and there's the gods that do all this stuff, and it's really weird. It's like, why would like Catherine with a K believe any of this crap? But she sits down and she realizes it's been a thing. And in the Freedom route, she doesn't believe him. And, in real life, why would you believe that demons and gods and shit happened? But whatever. She's still sick of the shit, and they break up. And they have different variations of the endings, but the idea for the Freedom ending is Vincent is alone. He's at the bar. He's drinking. He wins a bunch of money on like a bet or a gambling thing, and then goes on a space tour. And he just realizes that, this isn't so bad. I'm on my own, and things are not too bad. And, that's life. It's kind of cool. It's kind of nice. The second set of endings would be the Catherine with a C ending, which, again, don't really change a whole lot. That's what I don't like about the original, is the Catherine with a C endings. If you like her more, and her idea that everything is like chaotic and you should have free will and you should be able to choose everything you want to choose, and it's like, well, sure, throw what you have away and just go with what you're going for. And they play it so far for laughs, it's just almost absurd, because the level of stupid that you have to go into to get those endings, to basically throw away what you had to find this imaginary succubus lady, and then find out that her dad is the devil, and like, it's meant to be stupid, it's meant to be cheesy, and they like go to hell, and they become like, demons that party all day and have sex and all that, and it's kind of just like whatever. So I'm not like as invested in that, but I mean, you can get a chuckle out of the endings if nothing else. But I've always aspired to enjoy the Catherine with a K endings, and I've saved this because this is the one where the Catherine with a K ending makes all the more sense to me. Since I understand what Catherine as a person would go through. It's like, she's sick of this person just being non-committal. She's sick of this guy not understanding things. And if you go the Catherine route with a K, Vincent mans up. And he even says this during his dream. He's just like, I really enjoy who you are, and I get it. I get what you're saying. I'm going to, like, try harder. And if you really force yourself, I think this was meant to be the original ending because they focus so much on it. It's Vincent manning up as a person to take responsibility for whatever he does, whether he wants to marry Catherine, whether he wants to have kids, things like that. Before it's too late, and before she just gives up and says fuck off, because they're in their 30s. They, give or take, probably can't have kids, maybe more like 5 or 10 more years, right? So Catherine has a lot of internal pressure on that. But it's also the idea that nothing's changed in 5 years. So if you don't man up now and don't, take better care of yourself, then why should I care for you? You go to the bar all the time, you do all this stupid shit, and you talk to your friends, you probably talked about her behind my back and all this. But after a certain moment, you start thinking what it really what it represents, and I go against the idea that Catherine is like this frumpy lady or this just domineering ice queen lady. The law ending, which is what SMT calls this usually, is accepting order as responsibility, at least in this sense. You accept responsibility that you have to have some structure in your life. You have to have some belief in your life and take responsibility for the choices that you make and stop trying to make it about somebody else's fault rather than yours. You are responsible for your life and you are responsible for your life choices. And if you're going to betray someone's trust, then that's your own fault. And the reason I've always enjoyed the Catherine with a K endings is because I lived in personal experience of this very issue. To a smaller extent, but I'd say about, oh God, what is it now? 15, 16 years? I'd say even 20 years ago, I had my first romantic experience, but it wasn't like really anything special. It was take a school survey and we'll, match you up with certain people. And, I was non-committal at the time. And I don't think the girl and I really hit it off. And we were just we don't know what the fuck we're doing. I don't even reference that scenario all that often. We dated for a couple months, but it didn't go anywhere. A couple years go by. I find this other person who I basically dated for like a year, right? And I was really fond of. And of course, we hit it off super well. But later on, for whatever reason, I find this other person and I cheat on that person. And I accepted it the day of. My mistake when I told that person was I still wanted to, be with that person. She didn't want anything to do with it. She was in the Catherine situation. I didn't know any better. I was the Vincent, right? And I kept hanging on thinking that we were together. And then this lady comes and says, no, I'm with this other guy. And I'm going to be with this other guy for like 2 or 3 months. Get the fucking picture. I didn't realize it at the time because I was 17, 18, 19. And I really regretted that, and I still regret it to this point, because this is going on 2006, 2007, 2008 kind of thing. So a game like Catherine comes out a couple years later and is telling me these things. Like Catherine with a C is like, well, I'll date you too. Let's do a polygamous relationship as long as I'm the one you care about most. I'm like, no. I've been through that situation. I said the exact same thing to that girl, and I was like, God damn it. It's like, it's tugging at these things that I've done. And I think, in a way, I always take Catherine with a K's side of the story because I lived through cheating on somebody and regretting it the next day and not taking responsibility. So I basically lived out my own version of this ending. And it's hard not to. And it's not even just that. It's the idea that I'm hyper paranoid about relationships in general because of situations like that. I'm hyper paranoid because I've been on my own since then. I've tried to date. I've failed in that regard. Not really failed, but it was more like friend zones kind of thing. But it was just like, after a while, I get so caught up in being my own person that even with it's not a dating experience, when it's just talking with a friend or whatever, like I try to structure my life the way a Catherine would. Like everything has to make sense, everything has to fit, everything has to be around my schedule because I'm hyper paranoid. I think everybody's out to get me because I have like these trust issues and whatever. Because not only that, I have this problem of people say one thing, but they either take money from me or they forgot to work with me at a shift. They were designed to, work, or like somebody like stole an important item and then left the state, that sort of thing. And again, this is not romantic, but 10 years after seeing myself go through a romantic downfall, myself as a person became super self-sufficient but also hyper paranoid. So if something doesn't go right, and I had the situation last week, my inclination with people is if they don't live up to my standards, they're the problem, not me. And I would much rather not deal with them. And you can see where that comes into a problem where I have to understand that not everybody lives as this structured paragon of paranoia kind of thing. And I have to understand that, what if you do have kids, or what if you do have like an emergency situation? You didn't even think of it. It's like I couldn't have just talked to a person. Again, I'm not giving specifics, but that's kind of the idea. So between romance going downhill and trust issues turning me into a hyper paranoid person, the more I think about Catherine, the more I think I am her in a way. The less I turned into a Vincent and the more I turned into a Catherine, but the more I understand why there are benefits to being that structured and that lawful, but there are also downsides to being that. So a delicate balance is also intertwined. And again, I don't know if I really wanted to talk about these things, but I kind of had to, because now you see why a game like a Catherine game would affect me so much, to the point where even now, 10 years after playing the original, even if it's for the new ending, which I'm still yet to talk about, I'm going with Catherine every single step of the way. I don't care if it was a real cheating situation, whether it was a fake, whether she was tempting him. Like, you take responsibility for your actions and you are in a relationship. You either break it off, which you could have done, but she had to do it for you, or you take those steps and repair that relationship and you fall for that person all over again. Because after a while, infatuation turns into commitment and understanding. I remember that term. Once the infatuation phase of a romance is over, which after 5 years is probably gone now, it is replaced by a commitment to each other and a relationship. And I don't know if marriage or just being together as boyfriend and girlfriend are enough. That's a different story. Whether you want to have a kid or not, you decided to be in this relationship. There are two options. You either decide that it doesn't work, or you decide to do everything in your power on your own to make it work for them. If you're willing to compromise and be with somebody, you have to do that. Now, that seems really awkward, but again, those are the choices. I think black or white. Be with Catherine or don't. That was Vincent's mistake, and that's what he had to learn. I would always say go with the Catherine ending because he learns his lesson. The world goes, they are meant to be together. This is supposed to happen. I think even the new game gives you more stuff with Catherine to facilitate that ending, even more so than the original game did. So the Catherine ending to me is the one that makes the most sense. That being said, I don't think we've even talked about the third Catherine yet, and the whole reason there's a second game to begin with. And that goes into the character of Rin. Now, Rin is a younger girl with amnesia. She runs into Vincent. She doesn't know She doesn't know why she's running, but she feels that she's in trouble, and Vincent helps her out and says, hey, um, nobody should decide for you what your life's going to be. And I think she responded to Vincent because, well, she was saved by him. I think she got into because she was working at the Stray Sheep as a pianist. She got to know Erica too. So Erica and Rin kind of get along over the next couple of days, and alongside the original dialogue, you get these like little scenes with Rin, and Vincent, like, protects her and says, "Hey, I get to know you." They become neighbors. Rin has a bunch of this like weird ephemera, like dolls and like plushy things and pianos and stuff in her apartment. And, Vincent starts to realize that Catherine with a K is about responsibility and stability and, I guess you could say domination and order. Catherine with a C is like, throw that shit all away. It doesn't matter. It's stupid. Rin, otherwise known as Quathrin, which was an inside joke that the English developers put in. I think I remembered it was a Gerard the Completionist joke he did on Game Grumps once. He's like, "What's the hardest game you ever played or played to completion?" And he said Catherine. And it was like Catherine with a C, Catherine with a K, and Catherine with a Q. It was Quathrin, right? So Rin is Quathrin, and Gerard just laughs his ass off, and it's like, but Rin is her name usually, and her whole mindset is that it's possibility. It's don't let people define what you are, but not in the just throw it all away, let's just have fun kind of way. It's the why are you letting other people decide this for you? Because it still feels like Catherine is like needling him into responsibility because of force. Rin's whole idea is Vincent should be in charge of his life and be able to decide for himself who he wants. And if you let that ending play out, as a few of the questions go by, you're inundated with a question to open a new possibility. And that bar, the red and blue bar, you can decide to forget it and then just go the normal route and the game proceeds as it did in the original, or the seed will sprout, a plant will sprout up from the middle and just break the bar. And if you break the bar completely, you are allowed to do the Rin ending. So a few days go by and Rin knocks herself out and knocks herself loopy in a shower, or just like intense heat in the shower or whatever. Vincent opens the door. Again, they're neighbors. And, at this point, like, they knew each other, but I think Rin was infatuated. Vincent was kind of interested, but not really. And again, they play this for laughs a little bit at first. So Rin is passed out in the middle of her apartment. Vincent's there. And then he realizes, he looks down and he sees what he didn't expect. Rin stands up and goes, "Yeah, I'm a guy. I didn't say anything, but it's fine, right?" And, Rin is like super into Vincent at this point, and she just goes to console him and whatever, and she's been doing that for a few days. So she's like, okay, it's innocent. He knocks her hand away because he's just totally like unsure of it. And no, they don't show anything graphic, right? That's not the point. The point is this guy who was a girl, and to be fair, looks super girlish. I mean, almost to a T. But the game does throw little hints here and there, so you can pick it up if you're there. Vincent himself knocks Rin's hands away. Rin runs out of the room. Vincent kind of realizes that he fucked up, because it's not so much that Rin was a guy, it's that Rin was into him. And he basically just said, "I don't want to be around you. I don't like you because you're a guy. Because of a mistaken identity." And I said before that Erica knew Rin and knew about it and kind of knew what Rin's whole deal was. So Vincent runs to the stray sheep, and Rin's not there. Erica is panicking. She's like, well, have you seen Rin? And I was like, no, I haven't seen her. Did something going on? And instantly, Erica knows something went wrong. I was like, Vincent calls her out and she says, did you know? And Erica's just like, well, yeah, I mean, I took her out to go shopping, and she just stops and she goes, you didn't do anything, did you? It's like, dude, you gotta call her, fix this shit now, you asshole. And it's like that scene of Vincent finding out that Rin was a guy, Erica going, dude, you know better. Why does it fucking matter to you? It's like, get your ass on the phone. And Rin is just like pouring out this whole speech about falling in love and thinking that Vincent would have been different. And it stuck with me. It really did. Because again, I don't think it should matter. Like, if you fall for somebody, it shouldn't matter at all. And again, this goes back to Erica being transgender. It's like, why should Toby care? Like, maybe because he didn't know. And sure, in the heat of the moment, I guess I could understand Vincent's reaction or Toby's reactions to the thing, but when you boil it down, it shouldn't really matter. And I think you accept it. And that's what the rest of the scene goes with, is the bar buddies sit there and go, don't tell me you're interested. And some of them joke about the fact that Rin has a dick, and it's like, well, yeah, why do you care? And Vincent is just like, no, I don't care. I shouldn't have to care. And they're just like, yeah, okay, cool. So if you choose the Rin ending, that's what you decide that Rin as a guy doesn't bother you one bit. If you don't, the game, or if you don't even go for the possibility itself, if you choose you don't care about Rin at all, the game just proceeds to the Catherine endings. You have to physically want to do the Rin endings to see that. And that's where the game changes. The dream sequence with Catherine with a K and a C changes, and then Rin saves him, and they go up the tower, and he finds a way to finish the game by just accepting that Rin is who she is, and they either get together or they don't. And that's where the bad and good endings come into play. If you do the bad ending, the game kind of leaves you on this little lurch where it's like Rin goes off to do her own thing, probably to travel and do whatever. The game kind of prods you here and there to say that she's an angel, but they don't outright say it. All they leave you with is this idea that Rin and Vincent are going to see each other again, and Rin is an angel in a male/female body. And I kind of like that ending a lot because it leaves you wanting more. Because if you go for the good ending, you get another stage out of it. But at the same time, it's played for laughs. And when I got it, I kind of cringed. So because I've went through so many spoilers already, I might as well keep going, right? So if you go through that ending, you find out that Rin is in fact an angel, but her brother is going to kick the shit out of you. And all these like lasers and space and stuff. You climb these space things and all these like crazy just fights. And for whatever reason, and I shit you not, this gigantic like angelic demon brother thing turns into like these like small ass like, what would you call them, minion looking things. And it turns out that Rin was an alien the whole time. How she doesn't look like one of them, I don't know, but don't ask me. So they go from, oh, Rin is a guy. Nope, Rin is an angel. Nope, Rin was actually an alien this whole time. I was like, I kind of wanted it to go back to being an angel and a guy. I was willing to accept that. They go for full insanity, and they just be like, look, you said a new possibility would be open to you. You have to accept it, however you accept it. So if you go the full-on Rin ending route, they're together, and Rin is technically a male angel alien something, and it just kind of plays itself really fucking goofy. Not as goofy as the Catherine with the Sea endings, but almost on that same vein. And it's like, I kind of wanted the bad ending. So if you do play the Rin endings or whatever, I would go with the bad ending, which is awkward. But I guess you could see why less is more in that case. Like, if you go for the Catherine with a K ending, you want the full. If you want the Catherine with the C ending, you go with the full because you're going full parody at this point. Rin, you want the lesser of two evils because even with the weirdness of the reveals and everything, the scene with Vincent and Erica and Rin kind of back and forth, like Erica calling Vincent an asshole for not accepting Rin for what he or she was something that I was just like, dude, they kicked you in the fucking teeth. And regardless of how the endings shake out and how you feel about it, that ending is worth it. Or that little sequence is worth seeing in and of itself. And I still remember that. But all in all, Catherine, whether you play the original version or full body, makes you think a lot of things. And if you've been through circumstances like I had been through circumstances, whether it be romantic relationships or just friendships in general that went south, or, trust issues or what have you, or you have, like, I went through this situation, so Catherine spoke to me on this kind of emotional level, or I like Catherine with a C more. I like to have my life, free and easy, and I don't care what people think about me and whatever. It forces you in the space of a game to think through a lot of different emotional aspects of romance or trust or just friendship in general. And that is the part that I've enjoyed more so than anything else. Not so much the block puzzles or even the bonus content, which is just a lot more bonus puzzles and stuff. I did not care. I used the gameplay, as fun as it is, as a means to get to the emotional, core of who these characters are and why are they speaking to me in this level. Well, they're speaking to me in this level because I lived through these situations, and now they speak to me because I respond to them. And I don't know if everybody's going to, but if you play the game once or you experience the game once, whether you do or not, I think Catherine is a unique experience. The guys who made Shin Megami Tensei and Persona tried something different. It's not an RPG game. It's a block puzzle game with this romantic element in there and this romantic sense of what is this going to say about you when you're in a relationship with somebody? What are you willing to define yourself as? Are you going to define yourself as somebody who wants the stability and compromise and be with this woman for the end of time? Are you willing to throw it all away to cheat and be with somebody else? Or are you willing to just say, I want something different in my life? The Rin ending, nobody can decide for me who I'm going to be but me. And I just want my life to go my way. So there's so many different ways that this game tugs at you, and I will never forget it. Is it the best game I've ever played? No. But it's certainly one of the more emotional games that I've ever played. And I think if you got anything out of this, thank you so much. If you're willing to play it at least once, if you're willing to watch somebody else play it, or even just watch it, you're in for a hell of an experience. But that's it for me. And thank you for what I think is definitely my longest podcast to date, and certainly my most different, because I had a more personal experience with this one, rather than try to make a list of things to talk about. But next week is going to be another anime review, and that's going to be The Rising of the Shield Hero Season 1. They announced Season 2, so I'm not going to get to that for another year or so, but when I get to it, I'm going to get to it. It's one hell of a game. I'm also going to record my next video game review, which is going to be Super Mario RPG. At least, hopefully, we can get to that. If we do, we do. I have a guest lined up. But I have to understand that this podcast is meant for fun. So if stuff has to change, then I have to do what I did here and change it up. I got to change it up. I'm doing this for myself, but I'm also doing it for people who might be interested in these things. So schedule be damned, right? I'll record on Tuesdays, or I'll try to record and upload on Tuesday. That's all I know. I shouldn't have preconceived notions about where this is going to go, or if anybody's going to care, or if anybody is going to care and wants me to do a game or an anime that I haven't even thought of yet. But if anybody's interested in this, I've gotten some good feedback so far, and I hope that this episode is one of my favorites. I think it was my favorite to record, honestly, because it's less about the game and more about my personal experience and getting that off my chest. So this is one I'm not going to forget anytime soon. So hopefully this will influence going forward how other reviews go, and I hope people enjoyed it. But even if you listened for a minute, or if you listened for the entire hour and 15 minutes, thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.